welcome to Drilling Insight. I'm Jeremy Verduzco, host and editor of The Driller magazine. I'm joined today by drilling trainer, the driller writer, and co-host, Brock Yorty. Hey, Brock.
Hey, Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing very well. I pronounced your name properly this time.
You did.
So I'm going to call that a win. So on today's show, we welcome Charles' buddy, Sebastian. Thanks for being on the show, buddy. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was quite a shock to get the call, or I shouldn't say a shock, but quite flattering. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll surprise you sometimes. So
yeah.
Now, Buddy is Vice President and General Manager of Sebastian and Sons Well Drilling based in Michigan. He's a longtime industry friend and president of the Michigan Groundwater Association. And he has spoken at industry events about job costs, company sustainability, and the future of drilling companies. Today, we discuss how each of those topics dovetails into major equipment decisions, like whether to upgrade that old rig in the yard. So let's jump into our usual opening question, buddy. Did you choose this industry or did the industry choose you?
Both. I was raised, my grandfather bought out his partner in 1913. My father was a well driller. My brother, I didn't start out. I went to college. We started our industry. We started our company in the middle 80s, as it is now, in the early 80s. And I came back to it in 97 after working for another company for about 14, 15 years. So it was destined. I'll say I never got away from it. I worked weekends and nights, in the industry, but I wasn't full-time until 97.
So, buddy, what made you make the choice to become full-time in 97 and step away from the field operations and go into the business operations?
Well, I started in 97. When I came back here, of course, I had brothers and nephews and other employees. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So I started as the grunt. I started as the drill helper or the technician, which I'd already known. I could have taken my license right then and there, but I didn't. I chose not to because I wanted to gain the respect of the crew. And whether I have that or now or not, you'd have to ask them. But long story short, I went and worked for quite a while. The choice to step away was pretty easy. It chose me to step away. The business got big enough and demands got big enough in the office and running the company and talking to customers and doing quotes and all those other things that a lot of owner-operators do after hours or before hours or Saturday or Sunday and know the struggles, because when you're on that teetering point, it makes it tough. The decision made itself. There was no choice. I had to hire help, train help, bring guys up, and spread out the responsibilities. Yeah. It's just the evolution of a business growing.
So with that, how was business in 2020? It was quite an odd year for many of us. How did you fare out?
I am going to say that at least in Michigan, our business is up. I don't want to say exponentially, but I'm going to say probably 20%, 15% in there as far as total volume. I haven't got all the numbers back from my accountant yet, but it looks like we did really well. We're going to pay taxes. I know that. He told me that. So I guess if you're paying taxes, you're doing something good.
Congratulations on that success. I think a lot of people are, when they're home with the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of people are just getting home projects done. Like, this well has been running slow. I've been meaning to deal with it. I'm sure you're probably seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, our replacement business was up. Our service business was up. And I agree with you. I think there were a lot of things that were being neglected just because people were busy working out, doing whatever they were. And finally, that was a sore spot. They were there using it, and they got it fixed.
Yeah. So you spoke to our magazine for an April 2020 story focused on business sustainability. Now, we coach you saying you can't just work for beer and pizza. I love beer and pizza. What's wrong with that? What did you mean by that?
So that is a huge question, more than what you think. So it's a term I use that a lot of drilling companies, and we're going to talk about the owner operator or even the smaller companies, they're so busy doing what they do best.
Mhm.
They're out drilling the well, they're out talking to the customer, they're repairing the job, they're doing all those things. And come to the end of the year, they don't step back and look at their costs.
Mm.
And they're not bad people. They're probably great well drillers. They're probably great service technicians.
Mm.
But at the end of the year, they're going, holy moly, I did all this work and I basically made a wage.
Yeah.
I paid myself, I paid my son or my helper, and I paid my secretary, but I have no money left.
Mm.
That's what I mean. We really need to take a look at, before we even start the year or start the week or start the month, where are we at? What are you doing? Don't price it on your competitor's price. Price it on what you need to make money and sustain your business, because you might be paying completely different expenses than your competitor. They may be running under the radar, not doing proper DOT regulations, safety regulations. You don't know those things, and really you don't have time to worry about it. You need to worry about yourself and how you want to operate.
Yeah, yeah, and I've seen that before in other industries. People talk about buying a job, not buying a business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
but before we can even talk about like when the right time is to buy, to make this big heavy equipment purchase, a rig or a service truck or whatever it might be. As a business owner, knowing that there's something like that on the horizon, are there things I should be doing the year before or 2 years out, knowing, old Bessie's going to kick the bucket sooner rather than later?
Well, yeah, that's kind of a loaded question, but I'll answer it this way. 2 years out, you're too late.
Oh,
Um, with the current requirements to purchase a drill rig, you're talking 20, 30, in some cases 40% down. Mostly it's 20.
mm-hmm.
On an $800,000 drill rig, that's $160,000,
Yeah.
right there that you need down, or more.
Mm-hmm.
If you're wise, you'll put more down. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's take a business where they're at right now with a drill rig. Let's say they own a drill rig. It's old. They got it from dad, or they got it from the previous owner, and they have a tanker truck and they have a service truck and they have all those things. None of it's new.
Yeah.
Okay. I say you want to turn the older trucks like you turn old inventory. So you might not be able to buy that 2021, but if you're running a 2006 service truck, the next service truck, let's go to a 2012 or 13,
Yeah.
and then constantly upgrade them. And how you do that is you set back and you say, okay, what's it going to cost to maintain truck A, B, C, D, E, F, based on last year's expenses? Okay. If you're fresh starting, we need to talk about a different scenario.
Yeah.
But you base your repairs in this year's budget on last year's, and then you add some to it. You have to add some to it because you're going to want to replace that vehicle. So you're constantly maybe siphoning off some profits. Let's profiting. If you're not, we'll talk about going over your costs. You have to have your costs straight first, and then figure out your profit and what it's going to take. But you have to break out each one of those individual vehicles, whether it's a drill rig or everything else, and say, I need to replace this at this point, this at that point. And of course, there's always the unseen repairs,
Mm-hmm.
the motor that goes, the transmission that goes, the rear end that goes out. Well, the bad thing is the rear end went out this year. The good thing is you're going to put that in your expenses for next year. And if it doesn't go out, then you do something else to that vehicle or siphon it off to replace it.
Okay.
So you can't just run with cash in pocket. You'll never figure out where you're at, and unless you're really lucky and hit the lottery, you'll never replace that equipment.
I worked for a rig manufacturer. You helped me R&D some equipment, and I really appreciated that. We were trying to get a target cost together, and we talk about upgrading from a 2006 to a 12 or 13 for a service truck, but
Right.
drill rigs, when we're looking at that big money maker that is a core of our business, what is your replacement formula? You just said, you need to be
Okay,
looking at
so I have a formula, but I don't have a formula. So
Okay.
to answer that question, I'll do it this way. A, where are you located?
Mm.
How much business do you have? You have to look at it that. Are you a 50 well a year company, a 110 well a year company, a 250 well a year company? And then how far out are you going? Are you got truck miles or do you have rig hours? Do you have both? You want to look at all those factors and say, okay, based on everybody in the area and myself and this many wells, I can make a rig last 9, 15, 12. Amortize that out and say, okay, if I'm going to buy a rig today, it starts losing value, number one, today. Number two, it starts going down in value with every rod you turn. When am I going to have to replace that? Or did I wait too long to replace it before based on my volume that I've had consistently?
Mm-hmm.
If you waited too long, then you shorten that window, you put the money aside. You want to put $20,000 aside, $30,000. I mean, if you take an $800,000 drill rig, and I'm going to run a calculator here. So you take 800,000, okay, divide that out by, let's say, 10 years, that's 80,000 a year. You divide that out by 2,080 hours, which is a 40-hour week, and we all know drillers work more, but we're going to do averages. Okay, that's $38.46 an hour you got to put aside every day just to replace it in 10 years. Okay, now here's the bad news. It's not going to be $800,000 in 10 years. It's going to be more. Okay, now that's to replace it. That's not to put a tire on it, tool it, none of those things. That's just to replace it. Okay, so if you're going to operate that piece of equipment, you take that same formula and say, okay, it costs me, you add all those tools in and you add all that replacement in and you take the maintenance from last year, even though it's new. You take the maintenance from your old rig last year and you put that in with this, and then you start saving for that new rig. And instead of replacing it in 10, let's hope your volume goes up. Maybe a competitor goes out, you absorb them, or he decides to team up and you guys are one company. Now you're doing, instead of 140, you're doing 390 wells a year. You're going to wear it out more if you can do that with one rig. And you say, okay, now what's it going to cost me? Am I going to have to replace it sooner? So each individual driller is going to be a little bit different, but with a little bit of math, which we all know, every driller that I know is pretty good math.
Yeah.
Most of them. They take the math and apply it on the business side, like they do the drilling side and figuring out how deep they are and how much casing and all those. They can really get pretty sharp. And it only takes about a weekend, maybe 2, a year to set yourself where you're at and then go forward. Now, there are other factors that come into it, rising prices and insurance, rising prices and fuel and all that, but that's easy to figure out as you go if you have your baseline. If you have your baseline of where you need to be, then you figure that out going forward.
So, if I'm a contractor, am I thinking about acquisition differently if I'm retiring and replacing a rig versus like adding a new rig to expand crews in the field or the kinds of services I offer, whether I'm, doing, pump servicing or a different type of drilling?
So that's 2 problems. The first problem is with our industry, I believe that we're probably one of the most vital, valuable, and underrated industries in the United States. With that said, how many 25-year-old guys do we see out there? Brock can answer that question. Probably not a lot.
Not many.
No. As a matter of fact, I was one of the young guys when I was 40. I think I'm still one of the young guys when I was 35. Now I'm 56, and I'm probably one of the younger owner-operators in the country. we need to attract younger people to be able to do that thing, which is called retire. Retirement in this industry is a touchdown, and everybody knows the guy that retired because you don't hear about him a lot. That can be changed. That can be changed with that math that we're talking about in the beginning. So to answer your question is, first we got to get to the point where we can retire. And the second point of that question is, yes, you look at it differently. What's your transition going to be? Do you have a transition coming? Do you have somebody within your company that's maybe a competitor down the street that says, hey, Brock, when you get ready, I'm ready. Okay. You just come talk to me. We'll have our attorneys meet. We'll figure it all out. Or do you have somebody within that's going to purchase, and then you sit down with them and say, okay, the business is worth this much. Now, if we put a new rig into this equation, there's going to be some debt, but you're also going to have a better asset. Which way do you want to go here? And you discuss that with them, because the last thing you want to do, well, the best scenario is somebody to write you a check and you walk away. Okay. That's kind of unheard of in this industry. It happens. I mean, Suez made some purchases, and some other companies have made some purchases with a check. Mostly it's on time, with either the owner holding a note or a bank. Well, if the bank's going to hold a note, you better be making money. You better be able to show it. So if you're looking to transition in that new rig, it's a big difference if you're at the end of that career or if you're at the beginning, because you're going to have time to pay that off and maybe replace it again if you're at the beginning of the career. So it is a different decision depending on where you're at.
Just to kind of clarify, when we're talking about buying a new equipment or replacing equipment, like should I ask different questions of the business, I guess, if
Sure.
I'm expanding versus upgrading? Like if I'm replacing a rig, is there one set of questions? If I'm kind of expanding territory or expanding crews in the field, is that a different set of questions?
Yes, I think everybody can agree that there are different companies with different business models throughout the United States, depending on geographical location. What I mean by that, I know in some parts of the country, there's a lot of drillers that just drill, but they don't do any service. Okay, or they don't do any pump setting. The plumbers do it. But then all of a sudden, a legislation change, and the next thing you know, the drilling industry is now doing pump work.
Yeah.
So depending on your business model, if you're a full service company, and I'm not saying that those drillers aren't a full service company, it's what they do. But if you do everything, then that's going to depend on what portion of your business are you doing the most work with.
Yeah.
If you're doing a lot of work with a drilling rig and you run the service truck every Friday afternoon and Saturday just to catch up and keep some people happy, maybe replacing that service rig isn't the most important thing. You know, you might want to look at that new tanker or even that new grouter or the new drill rig if you're really wearing it out, or maybe doing some refurbished work on it when you have downtime, if you do have downtime. But if you got a full fleet of service trucks and backhoes and excavators and all this thing, then it's a juggernaut of, okay, you've really got to set up a replacement schedule on what's going on and how much service are you doing. So you are correct. You got to ask the right questions of your business. How much work am I doing with that equipment?
Yeah.
You know, I noticed that in our industry, at least in Michigan, vacuum trucks are becoming, a backhoe. Everybody's got a vacuum truck now because of environmental concerns, lake jobs, so on and so forth. They're backing up the mud. Regulations are making it happen. Lakes are making it happen. So how much work are you going to do with a vacuum truck? Well, if you're new to it, who knows? So my suggestion would, you might want to look at that used one before you go on to a $250,000 vacuum truck and use it 3 times next year, But I always say, if you're going to buy a piece of equipment, and this is the best lesson that I ever learned, and I don't care if it's a hammer drill, a sledgehammer, or a mini excavator or a trailer, always try to make it a profit center.
Oh.
Everything. Make it a profit center. Don't make it, I offer that too. We just do it because we have to. Well, that's no good, because then that's taking profit out of the rest of your business. So if you buy that vacuum truck, you say, what's it going to cost to replace it? How many years is it going to last? figure it out, and you're going to have to tweak it because you haven't owned one, but you figure it out, and then you say, this is what I got to have every time we turn the key and drive it out to make this thing profitable.
Well, on that note, we'll end this episode. Don't forget to check out our next episode, where we continue our talk with Buddy Sebastian, covering topics such as leasing versus buying, common mistakes that contractors make when making big equipment purchases, and the ongoing debate of new versus used when acquiring new equipment. So until next time, this is Drilling Insight.